Just who is that little horn that we find on the he-goat in Daniel 8? We've been working through a series on the Antichrist, and we've seen many different pictures and types and symbols of the Antichrist throughout the Bible. We're going to look in this video at the little horn of Daniel 8, and we have several more videos to go in the Antichrist series. Please consider subscribing to this channel. There's a little red button in the bottom right hand corner. Okay, first we're going to look at a summary of this little horn that's on the head of the he-goat in Daniel 8. And we're going to see that this little horn becomes great. He magnifies himself. He has mighty power, but it's not his own because he's powered by Satan. He pushes his way toward the south, the east, and the pleasant land, which implies he comes from the north and the west, and we're going to look at that. He's at the latter times when transgressors have reached their full. The Antichrist comes on the scene during the Great Tribulation. He has a fierce countenance. He understands dark sentences. He casts down the host of heaven and stamps on them. What in the world does that mean? We're going to look at that. He casts down truth. He practices and prospers. He destroys. His goal is to destroy the mighty and holy people. But exactly how does he destroy the mighty and holy people, which is God's people? We're going to look at that. And finally, he stands against the Prince of Princes. And we're going to look at that. There's another piece of the little horn, the 2300 days where the daily is removed and the transgression of desolation is set up. We're going to look at that in the next video. So you may want to subscribe to this channel to keep up with these videos. Okay, just some quick background on the Daniel 8 little horn. In that chapter, the prophecy is about two beasts. There's a ram with two horns, one higher than the other. It's the Median Persian Empire. The second beast is a he-goat, which comes from the west. It has a notable horn, a big horn sticking out of its head, which is broken. And that refers to Alexander the Great, historically. The four notable ones that come up is the four generals of Alexander the Great. And the little horn in Daniel 8:9 is the one that comes out of one of those horns, those notable horns, and becomes exceedingly great. That little horn of the he-goat, the Grecian Empire, that's the Antichrist. If you go to the comments section, I'll put a link to our written study on Daniel 8. But for now, just remember there's two beasts, and the little horn comes out of the Grecian Empire or the he-goat. But why call him a little horn? Again, we see that this little horn came up out of one of the four notable horns that came up after the great horn, which is Alexander the Great, was broken. But this little horn becomes exceedingly great, and this points to the latter times. It points to the Great Tribulation, and we see that out of one of them, and when we look at Daniel 11, there's a parallel passage where it's out of the king of the north. The fact that it's called little means he has small beginnings, but he becomes great. He becomes a world leader during the end days, during the Great Tribulation, at the end of time. And just to understand horn, and we've looked at this before, but a horn represents the strength of a kingdom. Just like the horn sticks out of an animal makes the animal strong, where otherwise it would be weak, that's the same, that picture is used, that portrait is used by God in the Bible. Deuteronomy 33:17, his horns are like the horns of unicorns. With them he pushes the people towards the ends of the earth. The horns of people represent the great strength of a kingdom. A very important characteristic of this little horn of Daniel 8 is that he becomes great, he waxes great, and he magnifies himself. It's all about him. It's all about his pride, his arrogance, and we're going to look at that in a couple slides here. It's just like the little horn of Daniel 7. That little horn that had this big mouth speaking great things, thinking that he's a god too. It's the same picture of the Antichrist. Daniel 7 has different symbols than Daniel 8, but it also ties to the king of the north in Daniel 11, who exalted himself and magnifies himself above every god. So we see harmony in the Bible, but this Antichrist is all about pride, arrogance, narcissism. It's all about himself. This is a consistent theme with the Antichrist. In more passages like 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, the man of sin who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or is it worships, that he is God, sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. He makes himself God. This end time leader is just so pride and narcissistic and arrogant. The king of Babylon, which is another symbol for the Antichrist, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will be like the Most High. I will sit upon the mount of the congregation, which is God's people. I'll be in charge of everything. But he's just a man, and he's a prideful, arrogant, narcissistic leader. This Antichrist is powered by Satan. Daniel 8:24, his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. It's not his own power, and we're going to see in later slides that he has the demonic host, he has Satan himself right behind him, and we see parallel passages, Revelation 13, the leopard beast, which is another symbol of the Antichrist. The beast which I saw was like a leopard. The dragon, which is Satan, gave him its power and seat and great authority, just like Daniel 8:24. And they worship the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worship the beast. And that's how it is that Antichrist is powered by Satan. We see also the scarlet beast of Revelation 17, and again, the seventh head of that scarlet beast in Revelation 17 is the Antichrist. And there's 10 horns, which are the symbols of the kingdoms of the world. The 10 horns, which you saw, are 10 kings, which receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. They have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. So this Antichrist is powered. It's powered by Satan. It's powered, as we're going to see later, by demons. And it's also powered by the kingdoms of the world. And this little horn pushes toward the south, the east, and the pleasant land. Daniel 8:9. If he's going towards the south and the east, he's coming from the north and the west, and that harmonizes with what we've already studied in Daniel 2 and Daniel 7. Babylon is the kingdom of the north. The Grecian Empire is the kingdom from the west. Daniel 8:5, a he-goat came from the west. And we recall the image, the great image of Daniel 2, which I'll tag on this slide. It's all, the Babylon became Media Persia, which got incorporated into Grecian, which got incorporated to the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire lasts until the last day in different forms. It's the Western world. It's Europe. It's the Americas. It's Australasia. It's that Western world, which has all the Greco-Roman culture built into it, the politics, the laws, the architecture, the customs, etc. So we see harmony there with Daniel 7 and Daniel 2. But we have to talk about the pleasant land. Because this little horn not only pushes towards the south and the east, but pushes toward the pleasant. And the pleasant land we're going to see is the location of God's people, which is in the nominal church. The pleasant land, by the way, land is not in the original text. It's the Hebrew word for pleasant, which is deceive, which means splendor or glorious as a gazelle. And when we look how it's used in the Bible, Isaiah 28:1 is used in the reference of God's church. Isaiah 28:1, woe to the crown of pride, to the drunkards of Ephraim, whose glorious beauty is a fading flower. Ephraim, which is the son of Joseph, which is symbolic for Israel, is a fading flower. It was glorious at one time because it's the church of God. It's the church in the wilderness, Acts 7:38. And we see another use of the same Hebrew word, glorious, in Daniel 11. The Antichrist, the king of the north, shall enter into the glorious land. He shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. The glorious holy mountain is where it's where God's people are. This Antichrist is pushing himself because he wants to persecute God's people. Daniel 8:24-25, he shall destroy the mighty and holy people. And that this word destroy there is really the word corrupt. His target is the church, the nominal church, which is more, it has many, many, many people that are unsaved, but God's people are there still. Also, he shall cause craft or deceit to prosper in his hand. And this little horn, and is pushed towards the south and the east in the pleasant land. It happens during the latter time, the latter days. It happens during the Great Tribulation. Four kingdoms stand up out of the nation, but not in his own power. And in the latter time of their kingdom, in the last days of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark senses shall stand up. And that's pointing all the way to the end of the world, because we know that this little horn stands up against the prince of princes and is destroyed, which is on the last day. It's similar to what's in Daniel chapter 2. There's a God in heaven that makes known to King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, the king of the north, what shall be in the latter days. And that word latter there, it means end. So we know that this Antichrist, this little horn, is pointing all the way to the end of the world when he stands up against the Prince of Princes, which is Jesus Christ. And it's also when transgressors are full. They've come to their full. And interestingly, that word transgression or transgressors, it's the Hebrew word pasha, which literally means those who revolt. It means to revolt, to rebel. So the little horn, the Great Tribulation is time when there's a revolt. There's people that are rebelling from God. And we see parallel passages. Isaiah 1:2, the Lord has spoken. I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled. Same Hebrew word. They've rebelled. They've transgressed. They've revolted against me. 1 Kings 12:19, so Israel rebelled or revolted against the house of David. And I'll tag this slide with, we've done a study on the apostasy. The apostasy, which we're in right now, occurs just before the revealing of the man of sin, revealing of the Antichrist. And that word apostasy means to fall away, to stand apart. It's to rebel from God. Daniel 8:12 and 13. A host was given against him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression. How long shall the vision of the daily and the transgression of desolation give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? The sanctuary is the holy place. It's where God's people are. At the end time, there'll be an overflowing, a revolt, a falling away from God. And we're going to look at now at more at that transgression of desolation in the next video. So you may want to subscribe to this channel. But we will, in the next video, we're going to look at that in more detail about what the transgression of desolation is, what the 2300 days mean, and we're going to look at that in the next video. Okay, so let's go back and look at other characteristics of this man of sin. He's the king of fierce countenance, of a fierce countenance. And in that word fierce there, it literally means to be strong in a harsh manner. It's somebody that's strong in a way that it makes you afraid of that person because they're so cruel, or the way they say it is so harsh. That's what that word means. Countenance means literally before the face, to be in front of that person. It's alarming to be even in front of that person, the way they behave and talk. We see in Proverbs 18:23, the poor speak humble requests, but the rich answers roughly. It's the same word. It's that same word, fierce. It's that same way, and that's how it is to be in front of the Antichrist. The poor is humble, but the rich answers roughly, or arrogantly, pridefully, cocky. That's the way the Antichrist is. And another interesting translation of that same Hebrew word that's interpreted fierce, Isaiah 56, they are greedy dogs, which can never have enough, and they are shepherds that cannot understand. They all look to their own way, everyone for his own gain. The Antichrist has this fierce, but it's not only to be rough, but it's greedy. It's selfish. A selfish manner because they're so prideful, arrogant, and narcissistic. That's what the Antichrist is like. And we see it's a symbol like a lion. What is stronger than a lion? Judges 14:18. Again, that same Hebrew word for fierce. It's fierce as a lion. It just looking at the animal makes you afraid. Deuteronomy 28:50. Israel's referred to as a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young, which means there's no empathy. Because prideful, arrogant, narcissistic people, like the Antichrist is, they have no empathy. They don't show regard to the person of the old, or grace or favor to the young. That's what this Antichrist is like. The Antichrist also understands dark sentences. Dark sentences. A dark sentence, literally, it's a puzzle, a riddle, a proverb, a parable. It's something that's kind of mysterious. It's not always easy to understand, but this person has that worldly wisdom to be able to read the proverbial tea leaves. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old. There's symbolism involved. And in the Bible, it's a good sense because it brings out so much beautiful truth about God and Jesus Christ and things of being a Christian. But this person, this Antichrist, understands these dark sentences. And we see through his policy, Daniel 8:25, through his policy, which literally means his understanding, through his understanding, he shall cause craft, which literally means deceit, to prosper. Through his understanding, and that understanding is of dark sentences, he shall cause deceit to prosper in his hand. He'll be able to use even the Holy Bible itself to twist and deceive. And because we know he's attacking the church, he's attacking the nominal church to try to deceive the very elect if that was possible. And we recall from Daniel 7, the little horn, it's the same Antichrist figure, but just with different symbols. Back in Daniel 7, it said the little horn had eyes like the eyes of a man. And we saw in Daniel 7 that points to worldly wisdom. So this Antichrist will be able to read the tea leaves, to even perhaps use the Bible in a twisted way to get people to his favor. One additional example of the worldly wisdom of the Antichrist is the Prince of Tyre, a type of the Antichrist, saying to the Prince of Tyre, "You are wiser than Daniel." Just think about that statement. You are wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that they can hide from you. This person has tremendous instinct, knowledge, wisdom in a worldly way. This person obviously is not a Christian, does not have the Holy Spirit, but has an ability to deceive, because we know that Satan is the deceiver. Satan powers this person. Satan is loose during the Great Tribulation. With your wisdom and understanding, you have gotten riches, gold and silver. By your great wisdom have you increased your riches, and your heart is lifted up because of your riches. Pride, this wisdom, this understanding, this ability to manipulate has gotten this person great riches, and they're proud, they're arrogant, because they think that they're a god themselves. And this prideful, arrogant Antichrist, it waxed great. Daniel 8:10, it waxed great even to the host of heaven. Host of heaven, and cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground, and stamped on them. What in the world does that mean? First, we know that this Antichrist waxed great. He's powered by Satan. The word host there is literally the word army. It often refers to angels. And I have verses listed for this, and I'm going to put some tags in this slide if I can. And I'll have more links in the comments to this video. But a host represents an angel. Stars, the host of heaven, and it casts the host and the stars to the ground. Stars also refer to angels, and we saw that earlier in Revelation chapter 1 about the star being a symbol for a messenger. And because a star is an angel literally, by the way, is a messenger. And in this context, it's talking about spiritual angels and spiritual fallen angels, because that word cast down to the ground, that cast down literally means fallen. These are fallen angels, and those fallen angels are demons. Revelation 12 and Matthew 25. So he's got power over the demons. He's got power over them because he stamps upon them. And the demons were cast down by Satan. And again, the Antichrist under the power and control of Satan. We recall in Revelation 12 that Satan's tail drew down a third part of the stars of heaven. It's symbolic for, it's a percentage of all of these angels fell. So they fell, they rebelled, they revolted, they transgressed, and they cast them to the earth. The earth is the ground. They cast into the ground, and that's what Daniel 8 is referring to, the fact that these angels are demons and they're cast down. Satan caused these demons. In the context of Revelation 12, they were cast down before the first advent of Christ because they were going to consume the man-child that was born. And we then saw demons were not prominent in the Old Testament, but they are in the New Testament. In the Gospels and the Acts, demons are very prominent because they've been cast down, and that's what this is referring to. But let's understand what this thing about stamping on them. Why does the Antichrist stamp on them? And that stamping of this host, the word stamping in the Hebrew has to do with putting under the feet, because the feet are what stamp. And to be under the feet means subjection and control. And that's what happens because Satan has turned over his authority and power to the Antichrist during the Great Tribulation, as we saw in Revelation 13:2, Daniel 8:24. And under the subjection, and we see a couple verses here, this refers in a positive sense, like Christ in Psalm 8, you made him to have dominion over the works of thy hands, you have put all things under his feet, to be in dominion over, in subjection to. Psalm 47, he shall subdue the people under us and the nations under our feet. But in the context of the Antichrist, he's got the demons under his feet. He stamps on them. He's in control of the demons. So now we have to understand, how in the world do the demons operate in this world? And when we look at demons, and I'm going to tag this slide with a video we've done on demons before, but there's a lot of misunderstanding. Demons aren't haunted houses and in cemeteries and things like that. We see demons referred to in other ways, and these are just some examples during not only the church age but the Great Tribulation. Demons are out there, but in the Great Tribulation, demons are in subjection to that Antichrist. But we see even in the church age, 2 Corinthians 11, just take this in, for such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into apostles of Christ. There's these false people that operated in the church all through the church age, and it's getting worse and worse as we get towards the Great Tribulation. No marvel, for Satan himself is transferred into an angel of light. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers, his demons also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. There's people in the church over the church age or during the apostasy, which we live in now, that are under the control or the influence of Satan. They're ministers of Satan. And we see in the Great Tribulation, and this is referring to Babylon, which is a symbol of the false church and parachurches during the Great Tribulation. He cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become the habitation of, you guessed it, demons. It's translated devils, but it's the same word as demon. And the hold of every foul spirit, which are demons, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk the wine of the wrath of her fornication, which is spiritual fornication, which is worship in other gods and idols. It's worldliness in the church. Even today we see that all around us. And in that way, he cast truth to the ground. The Antichrist cast truth to the ground because he's got his horde of demons, his host of heaven. Daniel 8:12, a host, an army was given unto him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression. And again, we're going to look at that in the next video. What exactly is the daily sacrifice and what is transgression, which is rebellion? And it cast the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. To cast is to throw down. It threw truth to the ground, and it practices and it prospers. And we know that Babylon, the false nominal church, the false churches and parachurches, about all their demonic influence, their love of spiritual fornication, which is love of the world. And so Daniel 8:12 and Daniel 8:24, his power shall be mighty, but not his own power, because he's powered by Satan. He shall destroy wonderfully. He's going to destroy, and we're going to look at that in a moment. He shall prosper and practice the same words as in Daniel 8:12, and shall destroy the mighty and holy people. who are in the nominal church and parachurches, and through his policy, through his understanding, he shall cause craft or deceit to prosper in his hand. Through his wisdom, that worldly wisdom, the worldliness of other gods and idols, the Babylonian spiritual fornication, he causes craft or deceit to prosper in his hand. Deceit, it's a symbol, it's a characteristic of the Great Tribulation, because Satan was released from his prison to deceive during the Great Tribulation. So we see that it's all about casting truth to the ground, and that is how he destroys God's people. So let's look at this thing about destroying. The Antichrist destroys the holy people. He shall destroy them wonderfully. A marvelous, wonderful. How can he do that? But that's what he does. But that word destroy doesn't mean what we normally think is like obliterate. That's not what the Hebrew word means there. It means to decay or corrupt. He shall decay, he'll corrupt marvelously. It's like, wow, how can he get away with that? And his attack is actually against the mighty and holy people, which are God's people, because they're persecuted by his deceptive practices. The Antichrist, his deception, his craft prospers in his hand. He magnifies himself, and by peace shall he destroy many. The mighty and holy people are persecuted. They're impacted because they're trying to function in the nominal church, the Babylon, the false churches, the parachurches, spiritual fornication, worshiping of other gods and idols. God's people are impacted because the church is impacted by deception. The church is overrun by the host that's given to the Antichrist, the demonic horde that's going to be running the church during the Great Tribulation. Let's look a little bit more at this word wonderfully. When we look at this word, we see it's used many times as referring to the Antichrist and Babylon. Revelation 13:3, the people marvel at the leopard beast with the wounded head. It's like, wow, this is a unique situation. They marvel at Babylon, the great whore of spiritual fornication, worshiping other gods and idols in the church. They marvel at the scarlet beast with 7 heads, and again, that 7 head is none other than the Antichrist. But they marvel. It's like, wow, how can this be? Daniel 11, the king shall do according to his will. He shall exalt himself, that's the Antichrist, magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. For that is determined shall be done. But he speaks. People marvel because of his mouth. The mouth speaking great words back in Daniel 11. That's how he destroys. He corrupts by deceptive words that come out of his mouth and come out of the Babylon, the false church and parachurches. And finally, and very importantly, this Antichrist destroys many by peace. By peace he shall destroy many, Daniel 8:25. What is peace? In the Bible, peace is pointing to salvation. Salvation. Romans 5:1, therefore being justified by faith, and that's the faith of Christ, not our own, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. It's through Christ alone that we have peace. Peace, but the Antichrist wants to imitate Jesus Christ. For unto us a child is born, his name shall be called the Prince of Peace. That's what peace is all about, is Jesus Christ, it's salvation in him. But we see a false peace. A false peace. Jeremiah 6, for example. These false prophets said, peace, peace, when there is no peace. Were they ashamed that they have committed abomination? Therefore they shall fall among them that fall. At the time I will visit them, they shall be cast down, saith the Lord. There's some that say peace, peace, when there is no peace. That's what the church is all about even today. Even today in the apostasy, albeit more in the Great Tribulation. It's about a false salvation plan. Salvation, peace is salvation. Though even today in the churches we see, how do you be saved? Make a free will decision to accept Christ as your Savior today. That's not salvation. That's you making a decision. That's not the faith of Christ. It's being baptized to be saved. It's keeping the sacraments to be saved. It's just going to church and listening to the music and participating in church activities. A lot of people think that's how you be saved. They're all type of works-based gospels. Keep the Sabbath day, etc., etc., etc. And that's what it's going to be like during the. It's like that in the apostasy. It's going to be even worse in the Great Tribulation. But there's good news. There's good news. Finally, at the end day, there's a glimmer of light in Daniel 8:25. But he shall also stand up against the Prince of Princes. He's so bold and arrogant, but he shall be broken without hand. There is a day that Christ comes back again, and the Antichrist will be broken. The satanic trinity of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet will all be thrown into the eternal darkness forever. Revelation 17, a parallel passage, the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings, and they're with the beast. The beast, and remember the seventh head of the scarlet beast is the Antichrist in Revelation 17. They have one mind, they shall give their power and strength to the beast, and they shall make war with the Lamb. It's a parallel passage. They're going to stand up against the Lamb, the Prince of Princes, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords, Kings of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. That's the last day. It's the beautiful day of hope where everything will be made right again. Okay, just a quick summary of the little horn. It became great and magnified. It originates from the Western world. It's headed toward the south and the east. The glorious land, which is the nominal church, it's where God's people are, is a focus of his attention. He's mighty because he's powered by Satan during the Great Tribulation. He has great worldly wisdom and understanding. But he deceives. He casts truth to the ground. He uses that wisdom to lie and deceive. He's going to be characterized by being a liar and a deceiver. And then he has the whole forces of Satan and the demonic influence to deceive and affect and attack God's holy people. So we need to look at these 2,300 days where the daily is removed and the transgression of desolation is set up by the little horn. We're going to look at that in the next video. Please consider subscribing, and thank you very much for watching this video.